You ever notice that America's been arguing with itself since day one? Like, literally, the very first meeting. It's funny, we like to imagine the founding fathers as this choir of powdered wig geniuses sitting around nodding in agreement, sipping tea and inventing democracy in perfect harmony. But the truth? It was chaos. It was loud, personal, and messy. And it was beautiful. Because from the start, America wasn't designed to be a place where everyone agreed. It was built to survive disagreement. So today, we're going back to the late 1700s when the ink on the Constitution was barely dry and two men, Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, started the argument that still defines us today. Act I, the newborn republic. The war was over, but peace was messy. 13 states, 13 currencies, 13 opinions about what freedom really meant. The country was broke. Soldiers hadn't been paid. Inflation made the continental dollar worth less than the paper it was printed on. And the central government, it was about as strong as a wet napkin. Enter Alexander Hamilton. He's young, brilliant, and born out of wedlock in the Caribbean, which back then was the 18th century equivalent of being an underdog from nowhere. But Hamilton had a mind wired for numbers, discipline, and ambition. To him, America needed to grow up fast. He believed in industry, in cities, in banks, and in a strong national government that could tie all the states together. Hamilton saw the United States not as a loose collection of farmers, but as a future powerhouse, a nation of commerce, trade, and invention. Act 2, Jefferson's Republic of Farmers. And now, on the other side of the room, you got Thomas Jefferson. He's older, taller, elegant, and suspicious of anything that smelled like central power. Jefferson dreamed of a simpler America, small farms, local government, citizens who were independent and self-sufficient. He believed that virtue lived in the soil, that corruption lived in cities, and that Hamilton's kind of government looked a little too much like the monarchy they'd just escaped. To Jefferson, freedom meant being left alone to work your land and raise your family, not being told what to do by some faraway bureaucrat in a marble building. So the stage was set. On one side, Hamilton's America of structure, strength, and industry. On the other, Jefferson's America of liberty, simplicity, and independence. Two visions, both right in their own way, both wrong in others, and the argument between them shaped everything that came after. Act 3, The Bank and the Battle. In 1790, Hamilton unveiled his big idea, a national bank. He wanted the federal government to assume the state's war debts, issue national credit, and stabilize the economy. It was bold, it was modern, and to Jefferson, it was blasphemy. Jefferson argued the Constitution didn't say the government could create a bank. Hamilton argued it didn't say they couldn't. This was the first great constitutional showdown, and it was about more than money. It was about interpretation. Is the Constitution a tight rule book or a flexible framework? Washington sided with Hamilton. The bank was approved, and in that decision, America quietly chose the road of possibility, a constitution that could grow, adapt, and stretch as the country did. Act 4, Whiskey and Warnings. But the story doesn't end there. Hamilton's next move was a tax on whiskey, a sin tax, if you will. Problem was, whiskey wasn't just a drink. It was currency for farmers on the frontier. When they couldn't pay, they revolted, and the government, led by Washington and Hamilton, crushed it. It was the first real test of federal authority. And Jefferson, he saw it as proof of his worst fear, that power, once tasted, would never stop growing. So he built a movement to push back, the Democratic Republicans, and the two-party system was born, not by design, but by disagreement. Act V, a country divided and united. By the time both men died, America was already transforming into something neither could fully control. Hamilton's vision had taken root. Cities were growing, commerce expanding. But Jefferson's spirit lived on too. The ideal of independence, of small government, of liberty above all. That tug of war between liberty and order, individual freedom and collective responsibility, still pulls at every major debate we have, from taxes to technology, regulation to rights. It's the same argument, just louder now. But maybe that's the point. The founders didn't create a country to end debate. They created one that could survive it. Act 6. The real lesson. If there's one thing history teaches us, it's that progress is uncomfortable. Hamilton and Jefferson weren't enemies of America. They were its engine. They disagreed so violently because they cared so deeply. The American experiment didn't thrive because we found consensus. It thrived because we found a way to argue without tearing it apart. So when you see politicians yelling on TV or families split over opinions, remember, disagreement isn't a flaw in the system. It is the system. Freedom is messy. Liberty is loud. And that's how it's supposed to be. Closing reflection. So here's the takeaway for today. America's strength isn't that we always agree. It's that we keep showing up to the argument. We keep building, rebuilding, reinventing, pulling between Hamilton's ambition and Jefferson's simplicity. It's a tug of war that'll never end, and maybe it shouldn't, because in the space between those two visions lies the heartbeat of America itself.